Good morning, folks. How's everybody doing? We're gonna head and get started real quick. Sorry for the lights. Like I feel like I'm on stage or something. But I really want to thank you guys for coming. I know we have folks that are traveling short distances and folks that are coming very far distances. So I really appreciate that, folks. I am truly humbled just observing the folks that are here, for me to even collaborate with and talk to some amazing scientists, folks that have been in the field doing great things from the science as well as the research security. So, and all of our international partners. So thank you guys for coming and folks for joining us here. Just want to make a couple of introductory comments here before I turn it over to my boss, Dr. Ramesh here. Just want to quickly introduce the folks that's really helped me put this workshop together. My team real quick here. I'm Tam Dow. I'm the POC for the research security here at RICE. With us, we have a number of folks here that's part of the organizing committee. Dr. Claudia Neuhauser, VP of Research at University of Houston. She's been a big instrumental player in guiding us. A bunch of us are research security folks, so her guidance and leadership here has been really helping our group. We have Chris Bronk, associate professor at the University of Houston as well as Rice University here, who works in policy. Mike Shannon with IPTalons, former NIH, one of the directors for one of the institute at NIH here. Terry Rossi from Wright University is with us, and I'm missing Diane, sorry, there you go, Diane Cutler, former Health and Human Services, OIG, been a big player in research security for a number of years. We're very fortunate for Tommy Shi to join us. He's from Sweden, from University of Lund here. He's one of the individuals going to present a bit of research on international collaboration. This area, believe it or not, it took me a while to kind of find out who is doing research on international collaborations. So he's one of the authors out there that I would say is leading the charge in helping us understand how to do it effectively. Am I missing? Dr. Mickey Stevenson, who's also with us. She is my counterpart at Rice University. She heads up the Office of Research Integrity. And she and I joined recently to Rice University. So we've worked a lot together when I was with the FBI side of the house. And she's at University of San Antonio, so we're lucky to have her also. And anybody else? Evan Roberts back there. He's the executive director for SRAI. And been a big player for us in helping us understand the research security landscape and getting the word out to the research administrators here. So thanks, Evan, for helping. So that's kind of our team here. I just want to hit on a couple of objectives here for our workshop. And I know this is a heated topic. I know this is a topic that hits home for some of us, right? Both from the science perspective and the research perspective. And this workshop, the goal of this workshop is for us to identify themes, research questions, testable research questions, methodologies on how we would answer these questions. Essentially, how do we apply science to this field, right? So as we go through this workshop, as you guys participate in the breakout session, we have these chairs and co-chairs that kind of guide us in these discussions. We have a tasking to do here. At the end of the day, we want to identify good research questions that are testable, methodologies that could potentially answer some of these questions. Research security is an elusive concept, a nebulous concept. And so we're trying to move the field further along in this area. And really, we want a community of practice to go after some of these research grants down the road, right? It's not successful if we don't remain together or is interested in applying science to this field. So those questions come from your heart, but also be with us in the field, develop the relationship, interact with folks, connect with folks, line up on our research agenda with each other, and then hopefully down the line we can tag team, work across institution, across the ocean with foreign partners and collaborate on some of these research questions that we come up with together. And that's going to help guide NSF's research on research security program. A couple of housekeeping matters. You'll see inside your folder here the agenda, so you can kind of be aware of what's gonna occur in the next 2 days. You'll also see a sheet that provides your name and the groups that you belong to in terms of the breakout sessions, right? And I think that's really where the magic's going to happen at the breakout session with the guidance from the chairs and the co-chairs. Paul and I are here. You know, if you have questions or in terms of locations and room, we'll guide it. We're on standby here throughout the conference to make your life easier here. Anything from office space to make a phone call, check your emails. I know everybody here, folks here are taking time out of their schedule to participate. You got big things at home, at institutions you got to worry about. Let us know. We can facilitate those calls or rooms for you to do your work also if needed. So please let us know. You also see two sheets on kind of a visual mental map for us, at least what we want to accomplish here at the workshop, right? You'll see from the virtual sessions that we had a lot of interesting dialogue at the virtual session that allowed us to kind of bucket some of those discussions into themes that are prevalent and are of interest to the community, right? They're very aligned with the findings of the JSON, right? Which will touch base. Dr. Keiser will touch base. Paul will touch base a little. Zukas will touch base a little bit on it later in the day. And but we're moving from those to clusters, right? Clusters are smaller groups of topics that are of interest within those themes, right? Within those clusters where we want to try to drill down on testable research questions and start discussing potential methods and approaches to answer those questions. That's why we brought together this group of folks, right? We have STEMs folks here, we have research security, we have cyber, we have policy, we have government experts, country experts. We have international collaboration experts. Everybody's coming from different perspectives with unique perspectives. And that's what we'd like you to bring to the table and view this problem set through your perspective, whatever discipline you're coming from. We have economics that's going to help us understand, looking at potential prevalence, nature, scale, and scope of the problem. You'll have some, this is where we'll meet here when we have the big talks and stuff like that. We'll meet here. Right next door here is where we will have the lunch for you guys at noon, okay, right outside here. The breakout sessions, you'll see, we'll kind of help guide you. There's elevators and stairs. I am not very good at orientation, but I think the elevator's on the right-hand side. Well, we'll get you to your breakout groups. The restrooms are around the corner there. So that's kind of it from me here. I'd like to quickly introduce my boss here, Executive Vice President Ramamurthy Ramesh. He has been with RISE for 2 years. I come with him after a year. I'm very fortunate to work under Ramesh. He is a true scientist, but also knows research security. He's been with many of our labs over in the West Coast. His bio, I tell you, if you read his bio, this is not something that makes, you want something that lowers your self-esteem, just read his bio. As I was reading it yesterday, I just like, golly, what am I doing here? But he's an expert in material science, internationally recognized expert in material science, as well as in physics. He's now leading RISE's research initiative, the ventures, the big push for cutting edge research here. Prior to coming to RISE, he's been here for a couple of years here. He was with University of California, Berkeley. He was the Purdue Chair in Energy Technology. He holds that. He was the director of the Berkeley Nanoscience and Nano Engineering Institute. He was the founding director of the U.S. Department of Energy Sunshine Initiative. He's been the associate director for Oak Ridge National Laboratory, as well as the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. He worked alongside Nobel laureate Stephen Chu, the former Energy Secretary. Ramesh earned his bachelor's degree in chemistry from Madras University, his bachelor's degree from metallurgy in Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, a master's and Ph.D. in material science and engineering from UC Berkeley. He is a member of the National Academy of Science and a member of the National Academy of Engineering. I'm very fortunate to have Ramesh be my leader here. Welcome, Ramesh, if you can have some opening remarks.
The first thing I have to do is to figure out a way for him not to call me my boss or something. But if you, I'm still watch a lot of Bollywood movies, and the Bollywood movies always, also Warner Brother cartoons, there's always a guy called Muggsy or something like that. And he's got one of these short fellows who's called a boss. So every time he calls me, I say, I feel like Muggsy's boss or something like that. So first, seriously, thank you so much to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is a very serious topic, as you all know much better than I do. But I'll give you a little bit of background about my own perspective and what we're hoping to do here at RISE and help the nation in some sense. I did the Sunshot Initiative with Steve in 2 administrations ago in Obama's administration. Literally the 3rd day, I had no clue, I'm a physicist, so we're doing this and that, And the 3rd day, I started on the 2nd of January. The 3rd day of my joining, 3 companies left the US. They left because they were all funded by your money. For 20 years in some cases, with taxpayer money. They left because they were getting breaks from other nations. Several of those companies also went bankrupt. They went bankrupt because of one simple reason. If there is one thing that should bother us a lot, that's this notion of asymmetry. Asymmetry is something that is very difficult, like research security. Very difficult to put a handle on. In the solar business, we quantified it. And that's kind of the ethos that TAM is trying to take. We quantified it. Hey, what is the magnitude? In a commodity market, which is what solar is, your margins are maybe 2%, 3% because it's a huge market, but you don't have like microelectronics, big margins on them. If you're getting subsidies and cost cuts, et cetera, at the scale of 30%, US companies have no chance. It's basically you're done. And you guys know the history. One of them was Solyndra, several other companies which went bankrupt and stuff. At that time, we were working very closely with our friends in Europe. We used to go very frequently to Brussels because Germany was deploying 70% of solar at that time. They didn't have 70% of the companies or manufacturing. Keiser was a good example. They all went bankrupt. Mainly because of this notion of asymmetry. And how to deal with asymmetry is a question. And one of the manifestations is we in the United States, and this is something that I was pushing very hard with the trade commissioner, we adhered very strongly to WTO doctrine, fair trade and stuff. But that's not true. The Indians do not, other countries do not. So it's something that we need to be aware, but we do have our own version, our own notion of what fairness should be. The question is, does everybody buy into that? Does the entire world buy into it? And how does that impact the United States? What was also clear to us at that time, I think it's across the board, whether it's quantum computing or anything else, the United States is actually very innovative. We shouldn't say we're the most innovative because there are a lot of very smart people around the world, but we're not too shabby. Now, if there is asymmetry in the translation of all of that, that impacts us. We could lose. We did lose jobs in the solar field because we couldn't manufacture them. 90%, 85% of solar manufacturing is overseas. 40% of the patents were being written in this country. So there was a lot of asymmetries that we had to deal with. We talked to our friends in MITI in Japan. They had similar issues on rare earths. And I did my Ph.D. on rare earth magnets, and Steve got a call sometime in 2012 from our friends in Tokyo saying, hey, we have a problem. Sumitomo is freaking out because the price of rare earths went up by 20x. And that's not a commodity market, but still, when you raise the prices because there's a monopoly, and that monopoly was again because of asymmetries, then you say, things can go out of proportion. And so we were trying to coordinate with our colleagues. So thank you for joining us from Japan. This is not just a United States problem. This is a global problem. This problem is only going to get deeper and deeper, more and more complicated. If you think for those of us who are in physics, we think quantum computing is the end of the world, or quantum physics is the end of the world, or healthcare or climate change is a complex problem. This is one level more complicated than that because it involves human beings. It involves human tendencies. So that's kind of the prelude to this workshop. But the big question, of course, I could give you a lot of stories. Charlie Lieber is a good friend of mine. Gang Chen and I went to school together. The question is, how do you figure out if somebody is on the left or to the right? I myself got one of those offers, what Charlie got. And except I got it when I was a Fed. I was at LBL. And I said, thank you very much, but no thanks. And I also ran an organization which had 58 high-profile FBI cases at LBL. Mark Irish, who was Tam's counterpart in Livermore, became a personal friend. We're still very good friends because every week we were talking about, hey, what's happening? How do you deal with this? And all of that can be traced back to one thing only, asymmetry. Therefore, how do you take something that's like this and try to level it? What are the tools that we could use? The tools of science, measurements, careful measurements. How do you put up testable hypotheses that will make sure that we're being fair? The one thing that we absolutely cannot afford to lose is the notion of the United States. The United States, for people like me, immigrants like me, and this is just an amazing place where you can do what you want to do within the bounds of the rules of the nation. We don't want to lose that ethos. We're a very open society. Our science, our technology reflects that. And I don't think we ever want to lose that. But having said that, if you superimpose that on asymmetry, there's a great chance that you'll lose the value of all of those inventions and stuff. And so one does need to be careful. What kind of protocols can we use as a nation? And we have the agencies here. What can we do to help the National Science Foundation, Energy Department, DOD, other agencies to make sure that it's fair what goes out is fairly going out, not unfairly going out. So that's a big question for all of us. I don't profess to know the answers because the moral compass is something that you go. If you're a fan of the pirate movies, that compass always points to where your intention is, not the North Pole, right? And so the question is, where is the moral compass? And so that's something that we need to think about. What I really have liked, Tam, and I just didn't pay attention until I was looking at people, is the different nations that have a representation here. Thank you once again because it's not just a United States problem. It's a problem for many countries. And so we need to figure out collectively how to do this. I'm sure at the federal level, a lot of different things are happening. By the way, way long, 15 years ago, in 2011, 14 years ago, I was one of the first people to put a tariff on. I was hopping mad about what was going on. Of course, we did it only for 3 months. I fought like crazy with the trade commissioner to say, hey, we need to make a statement that we're unhappy about all of these asymmetries. It's still going on. This administration is all they're doing. So this is a very complex playground. It's very, very difficult things to deal with. And especially if you're in India, I think this is easier. It's relatively homogeneous. If you're in some other country also, it may be homogeneous. The United States is different. But that's the fun part of the United States. I have a person like me standing here and talking about it. It's just amazing what this country means for us. Okay. So without much ado, our hope is that we can help. our federal colleagues, our international colleagues, to make the process of research. By the way, research is not just about Nobel Prizes. Of course, that's a big deal in many countries. I know of colleagues at Tsinghua who are simply set up to go win the Nobel Prize. And actually, think about the Nobel Prize. It's been very asymmetric. There haven't been too many Nobel Prizes in Asia, so they could say, "Oh, look, there's a lot of asymmetry there." But there are places which are setting up for Nobel Prizes. But the payoff is a lot more. We're talking about, if it's AI, is easily multi-trillion-dollar market. Healthcare sciences, multi-trillion. Energy, $15 trillion global market. And if you lose markets to other nations, that's a problem. That's an economic problem. And so we do need to be careful. So we're hoping that today, my request to all of us is, hey, let's come together, figure out ways by which we can share information, share analytics, share best practices to see how we can do that. And what better person, I can't think of a better person than Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us. Rebecca, of course, comes from NSF. She's the Chief Officer for Research Security and Strategy and Policy at NSF. So thank you so much, Rebecca. She's the first of it, and it tells you how serious. By the way, Punch is a good friend. Punch was 1 year junior to me in college. We used to beat the crap out of each other playing cricket, But he's a very good friend. I'm so happy he's doing a great job. So thank you so much, Punch, again. So in her role, Rebecca is giving NSF policy and directions on all aspects of research security. Now, she's got a very storied history. Before that, she was at NASA, special advisor to the administrator. Many different positions at NASA. She also served as the assistant to the director for international relations. By the way, I was also part of the Biden transition team because it went from Republican to Democrat. This is one topic I spent a lot of time. Jason Metheny, who's now at OSTP doing security, Jason and I became very good friends. I didn't know him at all. And so we wrote a lot of those term papers. I did all the earth charts for the energy department, but also the national security for computing. Rebecca is also on the board of the Women in Aerospace and a member of American Academy of Advancement of Science. She has a bachelor's degree from Wellesley College, master's from London School of Economics, and then a doctoral degree from University of South Carolina. She speaks Japanese and Spanish. That's great. And so she's truly an international scholar, scientist. So I can't think of a better person to come and kick off the proceedings here. Rebecca, welcome. And welcome everybody. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to Rice University for organizing and hosting this together with the co-chairs. This is extremely, extremely exciting. As you can imagine, I've had a vision of this program for many years, and to see it actually come to fruition, it just, I feel verklempt, to put it in, that's another language, Yiddish, that, but I really do, so thank you. And Ramesh, I've been asking Panch for years now to explain cricket to me, so maybe you can do it because he hasn't, I still don't understand it, so one of these days. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I wanted to give you a little bit of the origins and background of this program as we discuss it and we discuss and shape it. So a timeline. You'll hear from Peter Fisher a little bit later about the Jason Report on Fundamental Research Security. That came out in 2019, 5 years ago. It's amazing to think that. It's gone quite quickly in some ways, not quickly in other ways. But the reason why we issued this report is because we wanted the Jason, a group of scientists who work across national security, to analyze and give us a problem statement. Because, as Ramesh said, we want to look at this as scientifically as we possibly can. At that time, we were receiving a lot of briefings saying that there were issues. It was hard to characterize and categorize what those issues really were. And the JASON helped us understand that the issues still are challenging. They said we still don't understand the scope and the scale of the issues, but that they start with research integrity, mostly with breaches to research integrity. They start with things like undisclosed conflicts of interest and conflicts of commitment, the misuse of federal research funding, the skewing of the merit review process, and other aspects that appear to look like international collaboration but are not. And I think asymmetry is a very good term for it. They also said that many of these issues do originate with the government of the People's Republic of China. So you can imagine, of course, we at NSF hearing that and thinking, our closest partners are universities and researchers at universities. How do we manage this? How do we communicate about this? What do we do about it, knowing the open university environment? So we also started working across the U.S. government. We established the Research Security Subcommittee under the National Science and Technology Council, which is run by the Office of Science and Technology Policy at the White House. And NSF, NIH, Department of Energy, and OSTP all co-chair that subcommittee. And after a lot of debate, it took a year and a half, because we found that the intelligence community and the science agencies spoke completely different languages. So in addition to Japanese and Spanish and Yiddish, I had to learn intelligence language. And I think the intelligence community had to learn the science language. And we got there somewhere in the middle, I think. I think we did pretty well at getting to National Security Presidential Memorandum 33. And as a reminder, this is a memorandum that gives direction to the federal agencies on what to do about research security. But we had to do more. We had to give guidance to the community itself. And so it took another year through the committee where we issued NSPM 33 implementation guidance. And I feel that this guidance, I'm hoping, is helpful. We're not done with this, as you know. And this is something that I think is very anxiety-producing to many of us still. So through this implementation guidance, we focused on the need for disclosure. And so we focused in the agencies on having common disclosure requirements across the funding agencies, which we succeeded in doing, and I'm hoping is going to help give more clarity to the community on what needs to be disclosed and why it needs to be disclosed. We had the requirement for institutions to set up research security programs. Now, this is what gives me anxiety, because we issued draft standards for these programs, as you know, quite a while ago. We got a lot of comments back, and rightly so. Because of those, we went back to the drawing board, drafted new potential standards. They went through a lot within the White House complex. They recently went out for interagency review again, and we still had lots of comments. And the reason why is because we want to have that balance, and this is what I hear from the community, flexibility with the different arrangements and different organizations in institutions, and clarity. So how do you instruct institutions on what to do, but be flexible at the same time? And I have to say, I still felt with these draft standards that we weren't quite there yet. As an example, the revised draft standards had for foreign travel, it said, based on risk, you should have foreign travel training and briefings for researchers, but based on the risk. And my concern is, how are institutions going to know what the risk is? How are they going to be able to do that assessment themselves? So we either have to figure out how, through the new Secure Center that we're setting up, to provide more information, or we have to provide more clarity in the standards. And one of the main challenges, and this is, again, I'm going to get to the research security program, one of the main challenges, and the elephant in the room, is do we name particular countries of concern or not when we're thinking about research security and we're thinking about risk for international travel? CHIPS and Science names the 4 countries of concern: the People's Republic of China, Iran, the Russian Federation, and North Korea. We know that most of our researchers, if there is going to be travel to one of those countries, it's going to be the People's Republic of China. We have good collaboration with several Chinese scientists, and I am all for that. We also know that there are certain challenges and risks there. So it's a question overall of, do we be clear that if you're traveling there, that there should be risk briefings for them, or do we leave that blurry and leave it to the universities to decide on what a risk is and who to give briefings to? We haven't resolved that yet. And so that's why it is taking so much time. It's things like that. So at the same time we're dealing with all of this, I knew that we needed to study this problem more. We needed to develop hypotheses. We needed to gather data. We need to analyze this. And I knew that we really didn't know how to set up such a program. So we went back to the JASON and we asked them questions on if one were to set up a research program in this area, what would it look like? And the report actually came out in 2023. It's online. I'll summarize it here, but I do encourage you all to read it because I do think it has some good things in it. We then issued the Dear Colleague letter for this workshop because we wanted to start with a workshop, and to thank you, Rice, as the PI, and working with collaborators and co-chairs here. And we also issued the solicitation for SECURE, which is the Information Sharing and Analysis Organization, which stands for Safeguarding the Entire Community in the U.S. Research Ecosystem. And yes, Panch said, call it SECURE and figure out what it stands for. So I think we did a good job. We're going to announce the awardee for this center quite soon. It's going through our process. And what I envision is that the research results from the projects we fund through RoRS, Research on Research Security, are going to be dispersed through the Secure Center as well as in publications. So I see this as a beautiful coming together of where we are in 2024. So I was at South Alabama, University of South Alabama a couple of days ago, and I brought my daughter, who's a senior in high school. She's doing an internship at NSF in the speech writing area, so she was watching me talk. And when I talked, she took notes, and she said, Mom, you know, this is the way you need to give your talks. Give the challenge statement, and then give the path forward, the roadmap of what you're going to do. So I'm taking my 17-year-old's advice, and I'm going here. And so what are the overall challenges that we face in looking at this as an analytical and research field? First of all, I believe that research security is still not a well-understood term, and this is in the JASON report as well. We have different definitions. We do have the definition in NSPM 33, and I'll tell you here what the JASON definition is. We had a workshop that was hosted by the European Union, and we talked in that paper on research security about the fact that there are common elements of different definitions, but there is not just one definition. And so I think that's something else that we need to think about here when we're thinking about setting up a research program. There still is confusion about the difference and connection between research security and research integrity. And I think this is something else that we just need to think about because it's complicated. They're very intertwined together, as the first JASON report said. But then this JASON report differentiated them a bit. I'll talk about that. We need evidence to make policy decisions. We need data analysis. We were joking before breakfast here that There's a lot of policy that's being made without evidence. And certainly there's politics and then there's policy. We can't influence politics, but maybe by providing data and evidence, we can influence policy. We need to understand if concerns differ by scientific discipline or not. And the JSON did have some findings on that, but I think there's a lot more work to be done in that regard. We talked about some examples from the bio world, from synthetic biology, that have particular challenges and risks. So, how do we analyze those? How do we get to them? And we need to bring various research communities together. We have analysis, I think, that touches on research security in many different fields and many different areas. And my goal is to bring these communities together and form a community of practice. So again, let's form this community of practice to focus on developing a new discipline, to integrate social science, natural science, economics, and other fields, to better understand research security and develop a scholarly evidence base to grow the field. So again, this is a focus on bringing together different research communities to focus on issues and develop a scholarly evidence base. And I think that this is going to get us far. So the JSON report that came out. I wanted to mention this because I talked about different definitions here. The JSON spent a lot of time debating and arguing about this. And you see these definitions differ from what's in NSPM 33. And I'll explain a little bit why. So they say research integrity is adherence to the accepted values and principles that we all know that guide the conduct of research and recognize the expectations of funding agencies, research institutions, and the research community. So in other words, funding agencies, research institutions, and the research community all expect the conduct of research to occur according to these values, and that's research integrity. Research security for the JSON is protecting the means, know-how, and products of research until they're ready to be shared by approval of the leaders of the research program and other stakeholders in their security. The JSON definition focuses on the leaders of the research program because they wanted to emphasize the important role of the researchers themselves in research security. They know that the focus had been, up to that point, what the U.S. government was requiring. And what they wanted to do was emphasize the fact that we have to transition into a research security culture itself, where all players need to be involved in safeguarding these values. They also wanted to focus on the fact, this question of if research is open, if we make it open, then what's the problem? And the JSON emphasized the fact that it is when those who are conducting the research are ready to make it open, that's when it should be. And they need to determine as well particular safeguards that might need to be put into place because there might be certain aspects that are concerning for research, for national security reasons, for other reasons, that maybe don't need to be in the open literature. And we need to work with the PIs themselves to help make that determination. This was further emphasized in the latest JSON report that came out on safeguarding science. So the JSON also said that as far as the question about variance in research security across disciplines, that the research security definition does not vary across disciplines, but the consequences of breaches in research security and the measures to be taken to prevent breaches will differ across disciplines. So this is something else I think is key for thinking about this in a research security program. How do we account for this? What kinds of actions are appropriate? How do we even assess what actions to take? And how do you differentiate among fields? They say in synthetic biology, for instance, much of the basic operational technology of SynBio is already highly democratized. However, I would posit that there are still many risks in the potential results and uses, applications of synthetic biology that do need to be safeguarded. In quantum information science, the operational technology is less democratized at the moment. In other words, we don't really know what quantum information science is going to result in. And so it's much harder then to create safeguards at this point. So they say potential topical areas for research, working case studies of research security breaches, developing and accessing effective education and training strategies, conducting controlled experiments involving risk assessment, and performing a comparative analysis of policies of U.S. research institutions and identifying best practices. These are some examples. This shouldn't stop us from thinking broadly. And I quite like the 4 themes that this workshop is focusing on, because I think you can expand in these breakout sessions, talk about these topical areas, but also expand on others that might be part of such a program going forward. So I just give these as examples. They also emphasize that data from NSF and other funding agencies, law enforcement, universities, and private companies on numbers of breaches, on their consequences, are going to be essential. And so we should support acquisition and anonymization of this data for research projects pertaining to research security. I'm really glad you're going to hear from John Finnemore in our National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics, NCSCS, which is housed at NSF, and they produce the science and engineering indicators, because he'll give you examples of the types of data that are available. They're one of the top statistical entities in the U.S. government, and they're also working to have information sharing with other statistical agencies, statistical centers, so that's going to be key. So in the DCL, we talk about that we want to fund research that will identify and characterize attributes that distinguish research security from research integrity, improve the understanding of the nature, scale, and scope of research security risks, provide insight into methods for identifying, mitigating, and preventing research security violations, and develop methodologies to assess the potential impact of research security threats on the economy, national security, and the research enterprise. I also hope that this research program identifies the potential impacts of not collaborating internationally, the potential negative impacts of overstepping, of being too risk-averse, because that is something that we're seeing, and it worries me. It worries me because, again, we don't have these standards out. I think the U.S. government needs to be more clear. So I'm hearing many researchers are hesitating they're hesitating to do any international collaboration because they don't know where the line is. So what are going to be the potential impacts of that? We need to understand it. We also need to understand more, why are we focusing so much on research security? Is it worth it? Something else we hear is the number of cases and incidents is quite low. And we're told, but the impact is high, even of that small number. That is something that I see and I believe, but I can't quantify that. So when I communicate about it, I don't have data. I just can say, we found A, B, and C. That's really concerning to me. It's unfair. It's asymmetric. We have other researchers who did not receive a federal grant because somebody else received it unfairly. We have someone who is doing the same research in another country that they're being funded by the U.S. to do. That's not fair. Where's the data? What is the true impact of that? And I think we need more research to understand that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the creation of a new field. So this is one of my wonderful mentors, Susan Strange. As you heard, my background is in international political economy. And that was a field that was created in the 1960s and 70s. Susan Strange created the program at the London School of Economics, and there are other wonderful people like Bob Cohane and Bob Nye, who also are wonderful mentors and founders of this field. They did it because of, at that time, there was deepening economic interdependence, that there were, after there was the Bretton Woods, after World War II, a meeting that created a whole new system and led to the creation of the European Union and the economic community. There was the creation of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. This was a whole new thing of having international economic institutions, and we had to understand what that was. So there was increasing attention within my field of international relations towards the study of these institutions and, frankly, the study of governance of the whole world economy. Knowing that it was not just about economics. So economic theories they no longer applied, frankly, in this growing globalized economic world. And we knew that we had to take into account politics as well. And so we needed to create a new field. We needed to understand this new field. And it grew with the crises of the end of the gold standard in the 1970s, the oil crisis, huge recession, calls for greater trade protection. And so a new scientific field was created. Social science, political economy, but it was created. So I mention this because it's possible to do. We can do it. In the field that we're talking about here of research on research security, I think we need the social science, the economists, and the natural scientists, and we need others as well to help us create it. But we did. And the same questions were asked when I was entering into IPE. I was there in the 1990s. It was still questioned. What are you doing? This isn't real. It's not real economics, you know. But I think as we see today from the global crises and global economic crises that we have and the failure of many international economic institutions, the field is alive and well and very needed. And I think we can do the same thing with research on research security. So in conclusion, what I hope that we can do is build on efforts that have been pursued thus far. There has been very good work done in research security. We have the Hoover Institution, we have Glenn here, and they have developed some very, very good work. There's been work through CSET, Center for Strategic and Emerging Technologies. There's been global work done in this field. Let's build on that, and let's grow a scholarly community of practice. But let's think about this as a new discipline, a new IPE that we're calling RoRS. Let's focus on the data and the evidence. Let's build hypotheses. Let's test them scientifically. Let's focus on production of scholarly works. We need to treat this seriously to help shape policy and practice. So I look forward to the dialogue today, and I thank you very much, and thank you for having me.